So today's session is entitled The Case for 2SLGBTQ plus Inclusivity. And I'm delighted to introduce Loren Christie, who is our guest speaker. Loren joins us as Director of Business Development and Strategy at the CGLCC, so Canada's LGBT plus Chamber of Commerce. Loren has worked in tourism and hospitality for 25 plus years in various leadership roles, most notably with the Starwood Hotels and Resorts and Destination Toronto. For the last 2 years, he's been running his own consulting and project management company. After the CGLCC brought him on to assist with the tourism program on a part-time basis, he recently joined them full-time to spread the word on all their programs designed to assist the LGBT plus entrepreneurs. He also sits on the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, the ED&I Committee for the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario. So welcome, Loren. Over to you. Please take it away.
Hi, everybody. I love that we're a small but mighty group here this morning, so that's great. Be nice and intimate. Before I get started, I would just like to just acknowledge that where we sit with the CGLCC is on the traditional lands of the Cree, Anishinaabeg, and Haudenosaunee territories. And I always like to, in a land acknowledgement also, just because we are the CGLCC, just acknowledge the fact of our intersectionality with the 2S group of Indigenous folks that are part of our community and part of the other communities where we are acknowledging their land. So just want to start with that this morning. We have a big topic. I'm going to share my screen, which is always a fun thing to go through. So give me 2 seconds here while I do that, and you can watch as I make sure that I get myself in the right spot. Can everybody, oops, there, see, I already went back one. Let's go back there. Can everybody see that? Yeah, awesome. Okay, so today we're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to talk a little bit about the 2SLGBTQ market. And as you can tell, what Steve was going through as well, it's a mouthful, that acronym, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Marketing to our community, workforce and gender diversity, inclusion considerations in the workplace, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our Rainbow Registered Accreditation, which is a fairly new program that the Chamber rolled out 2 years ago, but is gaining widespread interest. So the market, what is the 2SLGBTQ plus travel market? Well, it's not just the gay market, which is what a lot of people may refer to it as. It's actually a pretty wide market. Our community is a big umbrella of people. So it could mean lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, two-spirit, queer. But it's also important to recognize that it's also families and couples and seniors and youth and all those other things that our mainstream travelers are part of as well. So when you're thinking about marketing to the gay market or looking into the gay market, that might be a bit too broad of a term for you to use. You might want to focus in on a certain subsection of the market. There are a couple of similarities or commonalities among the members of the community, though, in this market. We are more likely to hold a passport. We are more likely to have a larger disposable income for a variety of reasons, one of which that tend to have less kids. So there tends to be a little bit more money to spend. We have demonstrated our community resilience and a faster recovery time after other industry shocks like 9/11 and SARS. And I think part of this is also because just as a community, we are used to traveling sometimes places where maybe it's not perfectly safe, or maybe there's a little bit of risk just by traveling there because of who we are. And different people have different levels of tolerance for that risk. But in general, I think our community is used sometimes to going places where they have to be a little bit mindful. So we tend to get back on the road. And certainly the stats have proven that after COVID as well, which I should point out, a lot of the numbers I'm going to give you in the next couple of slides are taken from a survey that we did, the Chamber did just prior to COVID, like literally the survey closed March of 2020. So a lot of these numbers are taken with a pre-COVID lens, or all of them are with a pre-COVID lens. But I think we can assume and hope that we're kind of getting back in that direction now that we're getting through to the end of the tail end of the pandemic. The main thing to remember about this group, though, I would say, among all those other things, one of the other really common traits is just the loyalty. Once trust is earned, and once you show that you are a place that they can trust and be comfortable with, the travelers are loyal and will be champions for your business. So what do we like to do? As you look at this list, surprise, it's the same thing as what everybody else likes to do. Food and dining was the #1, popular tourist activities, outdoor activities, and it's not really till you get back down to the bottom #9 that it's tending specific LGBTQ plus events, which is not to say, hey, love a good drag show or a pride event, but that is not why people travel. So this market, these are the number one things that they're looking to do. And even more importantly, one of the most important slides of this whole presentation is this one, and it's the destination motivator. If you look at this, yes, number 6, there is diversity and welcoming LGBTQ plus couples. That's very important, and culture down at number 10. But number 1 is the most important thing is safety. So even beating out cost and value for money at 88%, but 89% of the people surveyed, safety. And what does that mean? It means, and it ties a little bit into number 6 actually, but it really means that when you walk into a destination or an attraction, a place of business, that you feel safe, that you feel like you can be your authentic self and that you don't have to hide who you are. And that is the number 1 destination motivator. And we're going to get into that throughout this presentation. But if you can create that sense for an LGBTQ plus person, you can target lesbian families, couples, whoever you want, with your food and dining and culture, whatever service you have, it doesn't matter, but that if they can feel safe and included there, that's the major decision driver for our community. So just a little note, if you are thinking about getting into this market a little bit more, Canada is overall really well positioned. You know, it consistently ranks as one of the best places to live and travel globally. We're known as being fairly safe and progressive. We legalized same-sex marriage back in 2005 already. We have a pretty vibrant community. I actually heard a stat recently that we per capita have more pride events than any other country in the world, which is pretty cool. There's so many little pride events across the country that we have. So we are well positioned. We do have a great reputation to start at. You're not starting from scratch if you want to get into this market. This next slide, this presentation I'm giving right now takes pieces from other presentations. And this one slide that I'm showing you now is actually part of a larger 2-hour presentation. So I'm going to very much paraphrase it. But just to give you a little bit of a sense, you know, if you did want to look into tourism development for this market, there's 6 sort of elements that we talk about. And above those elements, the one thing that I'll mention too is you really do need a champion. And it doesn't have to be someone that's in the community. It can be an ally, but someone in your business or your destination or whatever the case may be, your organization. If you don't have someone who can steer the ship and be a champion for these changes, it won't happen. You have to engage and believe in it. Like many things, like sustainability is the same thing. If you don't have someone that's driving the ship on it in your organization, it's not going to go very far. So you do need that. But on top of that, if you do decide as a business to get into this, you need to have an engaged and visible local community. And to paraphrase that a little bit, it just means that you should not just do something solo, standalone. Engage with your local LGBT plus community, get their input, find out what's important to them, find out what you can do in your business or your destination that'll make a difference. If you work with them, you're going to get a lot further. Number 2 is establish clear values, vision, and plan. I don't need to go into that much further. I think that goes for any strategy or plan you have. It doesn't have to be particularly for this market. That's pretty clear. Number 3 is build collaborative, local, regional, and broader partnerships. And for this particular market, it really is important. I can tell you when you look at some of the examples across the country, businesses and destinations that have done it well because they've started reaching out to other places that are doing it well. And a great example, you know, a few years ago, Prince Edward County, which is a wine growing region that's gotten quite popular outside of Toronto, started creating partnerships with some of the Toronto-based pride organizations and communities there. And they've really become an outstanding destination for our LGBT plus community. But then Kingston, which is very close to that area, did the same thing with PEC, and they've now become an outstanding destination for our community, and 1,000 Islands is now getting on it. So this whole area of Eastern Ontario is now kind of building on the partnerships that they got out of Toronto to create quite a little ecosystem, very tourism friendly, lots of great initiatives for the LGBT plus community, and it's noticed, which is great. Provide dedicated investment and support. This one I like to talk a little bit about because, you know, there's lots of ways to provide dedicated investment support, and money always helps to get into stuff, but we don't always have a lot of money. But I think the dedicated is the important part, even if you're not even investing real money, but if it's resources or in kind or just your time, if it's ongoing, and this goes back to what I talked about, the loyalty piece. So if you show loyalty, so it's not just a one-off and done, like I'm going to do this and expect a bunch of return. It has to be dedicated and ongoing. And one example I like, which is a little bit of money, but not much, was years ago, I worked at the Sheridan Centre, Toronto, back in the early 2000s. And a group of us that were part of the community went to our general manager and said, we'd like to do something as a group. And he said, you know what? Yeah, sure. Whatever you want to do. And we're like, well, maybe we'll go run in the Pride and Remembrance run during the Pride Festival in the city. So he paid for 10 t-shirts for the staff. Let's say just said Sheridan Center Pride. And then we were allowed to go back after and have brunch in the restaurant. So very small amount of investment from the point of the hotel. After 7 years of doing it, it had turned into a 100-person event. We invited our clients that were part of the community along. It was a great show of support. We all did the run. We all had the brunch after the hotel. It showcased the hotel. So again, the investment was still pretty small, but the benefits we got of it were huge. And the run was a fundraiser as well. So we ended up inviting the local 519 community center there, and we would do a check presentation. So that sort of dedication, investment, support did wonders for the Sheridan Center. And as I mentioned, it was early 2000s. So it was right about the time in 2005 when same-sex marriage was legalized. We ended up doing a great wedding business at the Sheridan Center because we had a reputation of being a really friendly LGBT plus destination. So really good synergies there. I must admit, we were also across from City Hall, so that did help as well. But it was definitely part of it. Offer unique products and services, and experiences. This is great, but it's not a must do. So if you have the ability and capability to put on something special, absolutely, it's great. Up here in Ontario, this Agawa train tour in Sault Ste. Marie's, this wonderful train tour. It's not a cheap thing to do. And they run through the foliage and the fall foliage in September and October. It's a great experience. They used to do a pride train. So they would deck the train out. They'd have a drag queen up there narrating, and they would charge more. But you know what? In that one particular case, it was so unique and it was so fun. There was value for the money in there. So again, the community doesn't mind paying a little bit more. But what I'd like to emphasize a little bit more is number 6, which is implement inclusive marketing and promotional activities, which is just to say, if you can't do number 5, don't worry about it. Because again, remember, dining, tourism, outdoor activity, that's what matters. So as long as you can show someone they can see themselves in doing those things in your business, that's all you need to do. So look at your website, look at your marketing materials, look at what you do. And is it diverse? And is it inclusive? Are you showing people in our community mixed in with the mainstream traveler? So really important for someone to want to see themselves somewhere, that they can look at that and see that. It is the most important thing you can do, is to show people in our community in your mainstream marketing so they can come and see themselves enjoying your product. And one of the things I always loved, Air Canada, if you've flown lately, they have new in-flight videos, and they're kind of cool. Actually, they show the different provinces, and they're like, doing dog sledding with whatever. But the one previous was sort of a standard in-flight video, but they always showed a male couple going down the aisle and putting a lobster box in their overhead compartment. And it was just very subtle, very whatever, but it was obviously a gay couple, and they were obviously coming from the Maritimes, and being a gay Nova Scotian, I could see myself on Air Canada. And I always loved that the gay couple with the lobster box, I thought was a really cute way of showing some inclusion. So very brief on that, but so key considerations if you want to get into it again. So do your research and understand the different market segments, which I pointed out at the top, so you don't have to be everything to everyone. Consider your pricing and distribution channels. I didn't focus on this specifically, but what I will tell you is that the research in that survey showed it's about 79% of LGBT plus travelers, they end up booking directly on the website for your business. So again, another reason why it's really important to show diverse marketing imagery on your website, because that's where they're going to be booking. So if they can see themselves there, then that's great. Identify your destination and tourism product and strengths. And this is just to say, you don't need to reinvent the wheel and create a drag brunch or a pride this or whatever. Just focus on your strengths, but make it safe and inclusive. The inclusive marketing, again, engage with the leaders, and more importantly, be authentic. And I'll talk about that in a second. I want to take a quick break here just to talk about Rainbow Registered. So how this came to be was after that survey, which I just shared with you. And again, that number one thing was the need to be safe and inclusive. The chamber during COVID stepped back and said, you know what, there's nothing across the country that lets people identify what's a safe and inclusive place. Sure, some people fly a pride flag or put a decal on the window, and that is all with great intention. I don't negate that. But it's a case of you don't know what you don't know. And so we wanted to create something where there was a set of standards so that when you were saying that you were a safe and inclusive place with a rainbow registered decal or flag or whatever, that there was some meat behind it. and that you'd actually gone through a bit of an accreditation. And so I won't go too deep into it, and I'll talk about it again at the end, but we look at four things. We look at the policies and practices that a business or organization has. And this is for, by the way, any business in any industry. It's not tourism specific related, but it has taken off in the tourism industry for a variety of reasons, mainly because it just is intuitive. But policies and practices, and important to note that it's also practices, because a lot of small operators don't have all their policies written out, and we know that. So it's equally looking at practices. Different trainings that may or may not have happened. We offer some trainings, but it's not prescriptive to take our trainings. It can be any trainings that you've taken that deal with harassment, discrimination, whatever the case may be. LGBT plus inclusivity is helpful for sure. We look at a commitment to inclusive leadership, and that covers not only internally within your organization, as I talked about the champion, but your business itself and the wider community. Are you a leader in LGBT plus rights? Do you partner with charities? Do you show that dedicated investment support, even if it's just resources or in kind? Do you do you work with diverse suppliers? Do you have a diversity procurement procedure? And we also look at culture of inclusivity, which is kind of a catch-all of a bunch of other things, which is things like, do you use your pronouns on your e-signatures and introductions? Do you have inclusive marketing? Do you have a gender neutral washroom? And a bunch of those things. So we look at a whole bunch of things. And I think it's really important to know, you don't have to win in everything. This inclusivity is not a tick box that it's one and done. What we're really looking for is that you're engaged in the process and that you're starting down the path. And I'll talk more about it at the end. But one thing that came out of, I want to go back. So we created this. We launched it in June of 2021. So we're almost coming up onto 2 years. And when we first started it, it very much based on the survey that I thought was like, this is going to be great for LGBT plus consumers, travelers, and guests. But then as we got further in toward the end of the pandemic, or the back half of the pandemic, and businesses were getting back up, what we realized was it was a really great tool to address the labor shortage. So where were all the workers? How do we address the labor shortage? Became really the hot topics in the last year for tourism and hospitality businesses. And so as we stepped back and looked at it, we looked at the latest census. The latest census, so I'm going to make a little case here for inclusivity in terms of Rainbow Registered and our community. The latest census said there's about 1 million Canadians that identify as lesbian, gay, or bisexual. A third of them are between the ages of 15 and 24. 100,000 Canadians identified as trans or non-binary. And again, the ages are age of 15, over the age of 15 to 30. About 60% of them were in that category. So it's not that all of a sudden younger people are out there saying, I'm now gay or trans or bi. It's that they feel much more comfortable self-identifying, which is wonderful. And it's that they feel and want to be their authentic selves. So again, reaching back to that safety and inclusion thing, it's really important for them. And I'll talk a little bit about the workplace. This is a terrible slide. I admit it full on. Someone put it out there. This is PowerPoint don't do 101. But the point of it is, I don't want you to read all of it. I just want you to know these are all stats talking about how workplace experiences for people in our community are worse than they are for the mainstream worker, for heterosexual people. Trans people in particular, almost 1 in 3 experienced precarious employment. 41% felt they were fired, dismissed, or turned down for a job because they were trans. Workplace experiences for gay men and lesbian women, twice as much feeling that they were harassed or discriminated in the workplace. And it goes on and on. So imagine being part of this community and feeling that way about a workplace. And I'm going to take a moment to dive a little bit deeper into one particular group of that. So gender diverse people, non-binary or trans, just a little background if you're not as familiar, so bear with me, but when you say that someone's sex, that's the designation that they're given at birth, and it's informed by their gender configuration. So that's congratulations, it's a boy or girl, and that's the way that it is. It's often as pronounced by the doctor, the midwife, or whoever. The gender identity is their personal inside experience of gender, and no one apart from that person will know what that is when they're born and as they're growing up. The gender identity is how you inside feel. Gender expression is how you display that outside, and it's your mannerisms, behaviors, and styles of dress and decorative body decoration, etc. The challenge for those of us who aren't living that aren't looking at someone else, or are looking at someone else, is you don't know what if their gender identity matches the sex that they were assigned at birth. And just because they have a certain gender expression, you don't know necessarily how they feel inside. And so that's where we get into some of the diverse genders. And so when you talk about someone who's cisgender, that's someone who whose identity and expression matches the sex that they were assigned at birth. If you get into talking to someone who's trans masculine or trans feminine, their gender identity does not match what they were assigned at birth. It's someone who was born male, their gender identity was female, and so they decided to transition into a woman, and they're trans feminine. And non-binary is one that I still also am wrapping my head around to a large degree, and I've learned a lot being with the Chamber in the last 2 years. And those are people that identify as neither male or female, and their own non-binary gender. So when someone makes a decision to transition, it's a pretty personal, subjective process, and it's also different people, transition into along the way and to a different extremes or different levels. Some people may do just social. They may just change their names and pronouns and their presentation and expression. Some people may do medical, where they end up taking hormone blockers, replacement, gender affirming surgery. And a lot of, if you say, well, why wouldn't someone do that? There's a lot of medical expense with that, a lot of expense that's hard. It's very hard psychologically on people. And then there's the legal issue, and getting your names when you transition, getting your names changed, it's hard. And if any one of you have ever dealt with a death in the family, for example, and the requirements to close out accounts and all that stuff, it is extremely arduous. So I highlight this because I look at this one group, and you look at the challenges they face. So invasive questions, prejudice, harassment, the impacts on mental health, and all that someone who's going through a transition really wants is they just want to be able to be treated, have their identities respected, and be treated to the identity that they feel that they are. That's all they ask. So it's a pretty simple ask, but then they face all of these challenges. So I loop back to my previous couple of slides. You have people who are facing these challenges in the world. You have how they feel in the workplace. You have an up and coming workforce who more and more identifies as part of this group. And we have a labor shortage in the tourism and travel industry. So imagine if you could make your workplace a place where they felt included. I think we can all say that unless you're the tops of really successful travel and tourism companies, we're probably never going to get a lot of people in there because they're going to become super rich. They're going to have a great life. They're going to find lots of fun. And that's why we're all in the industry ourselves. But what I am seeing more and more is this group, this cohort of people, in order to draw them into our industry, they've got to feel like they can be themselves. So inclusion in the workplace is going to be really, really important. So what are some of the things you can do? Again, I'll just briefly go over some of this, historical context, understand where people are coming from. It wasn't until 1997 that the Canadian Human Rights Act recognized gay men and lesbian women as human. And it wasn't until 2017, so 6 years ago, that they recognized trans folks as part of under the Canadian Human Rights Act. That's pretty crazy. Like that's wild. That is not that long ago. Try and get educated on trusted sources of information and get trained on things. Language used is really important, and I'm going to give you a little example after this slide. Physical and psychological safety, again, having that space where they feel safe and that they have that sense of belonging, all things that are really important. And I want to talk a little bit about the pronouns just as an example of all this, because I think sometimes people, and I know sometimes people they're scared to get started because they don't want to do something imperfectly. They don't want to offend somebody. And instead of just sort of moving forward, they sort of hold back and do nothing. And the pronouns are a really good example of that. Pronouns are used in place of people's names when speaking about them. And it's an important vehicle for sharing and respecting the gender identity. It's a really easy thing that people can do that shows that you're being respectful. So she, her, his, those one people know. They, them, theirs is the one that I think sometimes people have trouble with. And this bottom one, Z, zir, here, that is one that it tends to not. I have not yet met a trans person in Canada that uses those pronouns. It is quite popular in New Zealand and Australia. So you may hear it sometime for sure. But definitely I know a lot of people that use the pronouns they, them instead of she, her, or he, him. And people, so a couple things about that. first of all, well, why do we need to use that? Again, all people that are transitioning request is that their identities are respected. And by simply offering our pronouns up, what you're doing, it's like that marketing imagery. By me saying, hi, my name is Loren Christie, my pronouns are he, him, I'm opening up the door to say, I'm okay, my pronouns are these, I'm okay with whatever your pronouns are. It's offering a safe space, and it shows that they can walk in and offer their pronouns as well and say who they are. The other big thing I get from people is, well, it's not proper grammar. Well, that may be true to a degree, but I think that we can all agree that vocabulary and grammar has evolved and changed over the years. I recently checked the Merriam-Webster's dictionary for the new words of 2022. They included a paternity leave. That's when someone takes time off work to raise their pet, which I don't think had existed before. And the word adorkable was in there, which I can pretty much tell you my father would roll over in his grave if I used the word adorkable in a sentence, and yet it is a word. So it is possible for words and grammar to evolve. And I think that excuse, being imperfect is fine, but that excuse I don't think holds much water. And the other one, the little trick I use sometimes in my head is, if you're going to see a new dentist or a doctor, oh, I have a new dentist, I can't wait to see what they say. You would say they, because you don't know whether the dentist or the doctor is a male or female. So you would very much easily say they. If you find someone's car keys or wallets, I wonder whose they are. You might say that. You wouldn't say, I wonder if it's who's his or hers, or who, like you use they. We do use it. So I think it's possible to wrap your head around that. So just an example of one of the things you can do. And again, the mistakes, don't worry about it. I've talked to enough folks in the community. What they would prefer you to do is just try. And the one other little tip I did get from one of our trainers who I love, and some of you may have seen him, his name is TJ. He's based out of St. John's. He's a trans male. He was just at the Tourism Hospitality in Newfoundland conference speaking on a panel. And his line always is, you know what, don't put if you do make a mistake, just say, fix it, say sorry, move on. What you don't want to do is put all the emotional baggage on the other person going, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And then all of a sudden that person is obligated to make you feel better that you misnamed them. So just say you're sorry and move on, and it goes fine. But again, my main point there is it's better to try than to just not try. So a couple of tactical things in your workplace that you can do to help show an inclusive workplace: diverse staff and leadership. And that's not something you can do immediately, but make a conscious effort to hire diversity as you go forward. It's amazing what different perspectives will do and help in your inclusion efforts as well. Gender neutral washrooms and change rooms. Displayed signage, which can just be, we are a safe and welcoming space. Use your pronouns, names and pronouns, shared, received, and well respected. And it's funny, I've done some training for visitors associations, visitor centers in BC, Nova Scotia, and even had some folks from Newfoundland on one of ours at one point. And this one came up a lot because, in a visitors center, one of the questions was, well, I say, hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I was like, first of all, avoid honorifics that are gender specific. So why not say, hey, people, or hey, folks, or hey, everyone, and share your pronouns. Again, hi, my name is Loren. Welcome. My pronouns are he and him, because again, it creates that safe space and that open space. And the response back was not that they were against it, but they were just questioning. One of the women, I remember it, she said, well, I don't have anybody like that coming into my visitors center. And I said, well, you don't know, first of all, whether you have anyone like that coming into your visitor center. And even more, 100% for sure, what I can tell you is you have people that have loved ones. You have families of people in our community coming into your visitor center, 100% for sure. And it's amazing as those stats come and more people's kids grow and want to be their authentic selves, it's amazing how proud their parents are becoming and how protective their parents are coming. So even if you think that in your workplace that there's no one that's in the community, I can guarantee you there is someone there that has a loved one, whether it's a child or a friend or whatever it is, that is. And so they too are looking for places that are a little more authentic. So important thing to remember. Gender neutral and respectful language, participation in 2SLGBTQ+ events, acknowledgement of days of significance. And this can just be, as simple as acknowledging it, but I'll give you another best practice, which I absolutely love. So Explore Edmonton, which is the destination management organization for the city of Edmonton. They're doing a lot of great stuff in this space. They're really proactive in DE&I and sustainability. And again, a little easy thing they did most businesses have Lou days, personal days, whatever you want to call them. Well, they changed their personal and Lou days to DE&I days. So they just a simple change of the language. Hi, you're now working at Explore Edmonton. You get 4 days that are diversity, equity, inclusion days that you can use for days that are important to you. So the LGBT plus folks could take it off as Pride. Different cultures or religions could take it off for whatever they were taking off. And it not only acknowledged it, but it created dialogue in their thing. Well, why are you off tomorrow? Well, I'm off because it's this day that means that much to me. And I thought that was a really cool, absolutely zero cost best practice that opens dialogue amongst people to take off and share their backgrounds and their diversity with the workplace. And then regular organizational training at all levels, really important. And I know it's really hard to do. I have been at many organizations where once a year you do the online training for 2 minutes where you just click the buttons and say you did it and off you move. You need to do more than that. You need to take the time, and I'm not saying it has to be every month, but you have to take once or twice a year, do an actual in-person or online training with a physical person for questions and dialogue. And again, especially when it comes to DE&I across the board, whether you're talking LGBT plus or not, things change all the time. So just because you took inclusion training 5 years ago doesn't mean that it's up to date on what's going on now. It is a constantly evolving topic. So it's really important to have regular organizational training. You can offer mentorship opportunities, benefits package. I'll give you one other example. I love this example. I love sharing this example. Benefits a package that recognize 2SLGBTQ identities and specific needs. There's a distillery out on Vancouver Island called the Wayward Distillery. Tiny little distillery. They make gin. They were founded by 2 people that were both military spouses, so friends. So their spouses traveled all over the world with them, and they ended up, kind of feeling out of place in most of the places that they lived. And they all retired back onto Vancouver Island. And the 2 spouses said, we're going to go start a gin distillery. It's what we always wanted to do, but we're going to make a point of hiring people that might feel a little marginalized and out of sorts, because we know what that's like. So during their hiring process, they hired a person that was transitioning. And they talked with them as they went through this and started writing into their HR policies and their practices benefits that would help them. And simple things like just, on their forms, their intake forms, options for names, removing the honorifics, legal name or preferred name, and different things that they could do like that in terms of benefits for them. They got such a good reputation that when they started, they had 11 employees. Now they have 15 or 16. But they now have 3 people that are part of the trans community as part of that, because that person that they hired told a friend who told a friend, and they now have 3 incredibly loyal customers who appreciate that they recognize some of the benefits that they require. Assumptions about gender orientation, and this just goes back to, just be open in your language when you're asking people how their weekend was. What did they do with their other half? Or, it could be as simple as, if you threw a wedding shower for the straight couple that got married, throw a wedding shower for the gay co-worker who may have got married. Just simple things like that. And just be open, that people can feel open to share the perspectives and contribute to the workplace. This is just all the benefits that we talk about, but the main benefit, I think, in particular for this group, is I just really think if you do some of those things, you're going to attract A, customers, and B, labor force. Simple as that. I think those are the 2 big benefits for any tourism business. Challenges with this, which I understand, outdated, ineffectively enforced policies. You can have stuff, but again, this goes back to the champion, insufficient training, biases, lack of commitment, and then the surface efforts. It's really hard if you're doing something in your business, but as part of the tourism ecosystem, other businesses in your destination are not doing that. And there's a hotel again out on Vancouver Island called the Kingfisher, and they do annual training for all their staff in LGBT plus inclusion, and they invite the restaurants and shops in their local neighborhood to attend that training, and it's on them. They pay for the training for those staff, and those are the restaurants and shops that they recommend that their guests go to. Because they want to ensure, if they're promoting the fact that a guest can come to their hotel and feel safe and included, that they can then feel safe and included when they get a restaurant recommendation to go out, or at least point out the fact that that restaurant has undergone the same training as they have. Again, if you're in a workplace that the boss isn't leading the charge, you could still do some stuff. You can challenge the bullying and harassment. You can try to support volunteer different initiatives outside of the workplace. Talk about trying to build an ERG, an employee resource group or ally network, and just be deliberate in your communication. Use gender neutral language, as I said, respect the names and pronouns, introduce your pronoun. There are still things you can do, even if it's not led by the organization. And then last but not least, just to go back to what I said about, I believe that this is a great recruitment tool. Publicize your 2SLGBTQ plus related policies. I think you're going to see job seekers will react to that. And these stats come from a private work survey that was done. Job seekers do care about that. Talk about the staff the staff training that you'll receive. Explicitly state that you are friendly in your job posting, and advertise in 2SLGBTQ plus magazines or associations when you're trying to recruit. One best practice that a group here in Ontario does, the Elmshurst Resort, they specifically send their job postings for summer students to a couple of universities and colleges in the area, but they specifically send them to the 2SLGBTQ plus ally groups and ask them to post them there because they're looking for diverse students, and that goes huge. Someone sees that and they're looking for a summer job, you better believe that that's where they're going to want to go work, because they specifically said and advertised in that forum. So this brings me back to the Rainbow Registered accreditation. Again, just a few more things on this. We started it in June of 2021. We're now, as I said, almost 2 years in. It was a slow burn, but we are really getting a lot of momentum going. We currently have 177 accredited businesses across the country, and we have another 50 sitting with our assessors right now. So by the end of the month, we're hoping to be up at around 250, 230. But daily, we're now getting requests daily, and I think people are understanding that this is an important thing to show. And the last thing I'll talk about is our website, so rainbowregistered.ca. If you want to learn more about the program, it's the cglcc.ca website. That's where businesses can go to enroll and contact me or my colleague Connor. But for consumers and for businesses, once the businesses are registered as and accredited, they go into our business directory, which is rainbowregistered.ca. So when an LGBT plus consumer or person that's looking for work, for example, goes online, they can see this, and all the listed businesses are on there. And we have started very recently. We were very much focused in the first year on getting businesses signed up. Now that we have a good quorum of businesses, we're focusing a little bit more on driving the message to consumers to know about it so that they use this website when looking for places to go. So we attended the New York Outdoor Travel and Leisure Show in the LGBTQ plus pavilion back in January and had 4,000 people come through. We were actually very close to the folks at Tourism Eastern Newfoundland. I guess the booth, I wasn't there, but my colleagues told me the Tourism Eastern Newfoundland booth was pretty close by. And we are just about to launch in a week. We've already signed up, ready to go, just about to hit press play through FedDev Ontario. Actually, we got a very nice grant to do a very large consumer awareness campaign through Tartan Bond, which is one of the better PR and marketing agencies for travel related businesses in Canada. So you're going to see a lot in the next 2 months talking about this rainbowregistered.ca and driving consumer awareness. Because again, it's the right thing to do. It's a great thing to do for your employees and for your potential guests. But we also recognize that you want to say that you've done it. You want to be celebrated for have done it. And that LGBT plus consumers, again, who show loyalty, will then come to your place of business and give you their business. So that is it. I'm going to stop sharing so I can see people's faces. I hope that was, that's a lot of information, I know, but I hopefully it was somewhat digestible. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to hear them. Any questions, anybody? We're a small group, don't be shy.
Hi, Loren. Deborah here. Yeah, no, that was excellent, actually. Thank you so much. I think many times we think we know things that when I came through this presentation now, I thought, oh, okay, I didn't know that, never thought about this. That sounds like a good idea. So I think from that perspective, like just filling in some of the gaps for us. I'm in Twillingate. I think this is the first call I've ever been on that I don't know anyone. So that's neat and unique. So I'm assuming most people are from Newfoundland, but if not, I'm in Twillingate. And if any of you know much about Twillingate, it's located right in the heart of the Bible Belt of Newfoundland and Labrador. And of course, my partner and I were LGBTQ owners. I never the IA plus whatever 2SL. I still struggle with the acronym myself.
Me too.
You know, and as it changes, I notice that you don't use the IA, you're just using the plus. So it's always good to see. You know, we feel like, you know, we create a very inclusive environment, and I believe we have, you know, inclusion on every different level that we can reach out and put our arms around. We have 45 employees that work with us almost each season. So we're the largest employer in the town, albeit seasonal. We do have a hospital and a school that employ more people year round. But, you know, I have found, even with my own lived experience, still struggling a little bit. And excuse me, so obviously someone is coming and the doorbell is ringing. Hopefully someone else will get that. You know, when you're actually in the process of working with each individual person, everyone has a different lived experience and different needs, no matter what label we give them. And I think that's the thing that when we talk about inclusion, that's most important, is that it's an individual thing. It's not, we tend to look at inclusion as a group thing. We're including this group and we're including that group and we're including this group. But, you know, all of our, you know, I grew up in an extremely affirming situation, and I've, you know, been relatively successful throughout my career and have had very few sort of barriers and challenges. Whereas, you know, I can employ someone else that has had exactly the opposite experience because of who they are and how they, you know, what their lived experience has been. So I think that's been my big challenge, is meeting each individual person where they're at. And I've been somewhat successful, and I have admittedly failed miserably on a couple of occasions. And so this is all very interesting to know about the accreditation as well, which I think is something that's, you know, long overdue. And I didn't even know about it actually until last week. TJ mentioned it at the conference, and I actually moderated that session.
Oh, amazing.
And so it was really great to have that. It was our first EDI session we'd ever had at the conference. I felt like it went extremely well. And it was just the very beginning of the conversation, and, you know, with many more conversations to come. But that, I just thought I'd express that.
That's great. No, great points. And I love that you were moderating that conference, or that panel. That's great. That's great. Any other comments or questions?
I'll jump in. Hi, everyone. So I live in Pittsburgh, so I think I'm a little bit of an outlier here, but have spent time in Atlantic Canada. And just want to say, like, when Deborah mentioned the Bible Belt, there was a little alarm that went up for me, you know, and, you know, I just want to express that the safety concern is very real, you know, and it's easier for me to feel safe just based on my outward appearance and gender expression than a lot of other people. But it's a real concern. And the other thing I'm thinking is, okay, so that little alarm went off, but there's also sort of like, as a traveler, I guess I feel a little bit of a responsibility as well, that sort of like works both ways, you know, not to make any assumptions about an area. So just want to throw that out there as well.
For sure. And it's what's nice about the program, you know, I love it, because I think it's a way of saying that no one has to make an assumption. Like, here you are. And there are a lot of areas in Canada that maybe people think of as Bible Belt. Southwest Ontario, where I'm actually in right now at this conference, is one of them. But they, you know, they're making a big effort to get enrolled and promote LGBTQ plus tourism here, and they want to make a big difference. So the people there are trailblazers here that are doing it, and yeah, you're right. It's important to know that it goes both ways, but I think the more open dialogue we have, the better.
Sure. And just to finish up, like, there are like great tools out there, like the tool that you've developed, and, you know, people like Deborah, and, you know, that make it a little bit easier to make travel decisions these days, which is great. My wife and I spent the summer in rural Nova Scotia last summer in Parsboro, and you know, like before we traveled, when we were trying to make the decision, we were talking to the woman renting us a cottage, and you know, there was a conversation about safety, and you know, her reassurance to us about, you know, Parsboro being a very open area, you know, made all the difference for us. So yeah, thanks for hosting this.
I'm glad you went there, Amy. My cottage is just outside of Amherst, so we're pretty close to Parsboro. It's a great part of the country.
And we stumbled upon a Pride event in Amherst, and it was just so much fun to see that in a community of that size.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions or comments?
Just a quick comment. I was thinking about how I can use this information, how I can go back and, but I think promoting the certification is a great thing to celebrate, to reach out into the business community during Pride. So, hey, it's Pride Week. You could celebrate by, here's some information to make your bit to, you know, just to make your business more welcoming. And yeah, anyway, that's exciting. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. And if anyone here, I know Deborah, you're in Newfoundland. I don't know if anyone else is in Atlantic Canada, but for those who are in Atlantic Canada, we actually received a COA funding last year, and we have a number of, and some of that money could go toward accreditations, complimentary for the first year. And I always say to people, don't do it because it's free, do it because you want to and get engaged. But it's a nice thing that it is free, but we have about 10 days left because we submit our final report at the end of March. So we only have a few left, but if anyone on this call wants to take advantage of that, feel free to email me, and I can just put my email into the chat, and I can send you a code to go on, but you'll have to do it in the next week. But you can go on and you register with an assessor. I give you the code and it blanks out the cost. And the cost, just in case if you're wondering too, if you're a business of 10 or less, it's $299. If you're a business of 10 to 100, it's $599. And if you're 100 or more, it's $750. And once you get into large corporations, we have to actually do it on a case-by-case basis, because once you start talking about businesses that aren't under one roof with one sort of employment chain, one chain of command, it gets a little more complicated. But we have recently done like BDC banks across Canada, for example, but that was a different price point and a different amount of work that had to go into that. But we will do large corporations. But for businesses that are just under one roof and one leadership team, it's that pricing. But again, a COA, we can give it to you for free if you want to do it in the next. You don't have to finish it in the next 3 weeks, but you have to start it. We have to get.
Yeah, that's cool. I am from Nova Scotia, and not in the business community. I'm in municipal government, but I work in recreation. My colleague works in community development, and so I can pass that information to her.
Pass it on. And I should point out too, it's for travel, tourism, and hospitality related businesses. It was an ACOA fund based on the pandemic and trying to get businesses to help them out. So
perfect. Yeah, that's her focus.
Oh, great. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you. Have her email me. Would love to hear from her. Anybody else? Any other comments or questions?
I think that's a good segue into, Gross Morin in our region. We're doing some work with Loren and his group in terms of inclusivity. And I know for my own self, when we first sort of started the conversation, I can get caught up in, big things, big projects. But I think as Loren sort of relayed in his conversation here, sometimes it's just doing the small things. And for us, I know in Gross Morin, it's engaging Parks Canada, key stakeholders on the ground, and just having those conversations with the key people in the community, and building the relationships and making small changes and to grow, right? And I think that's what we all want to do. So I just really thank Loren for his time, and again for the programming with the COA. I think it's all really good, and I'm really happy with where we're building in Gross Morin, and hopefully we can make some, be a more inclusive destination as we grow. So just really want to thank Loren for his time today.
Great. Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for attending. Don't forget to complete a survey at the end of the session. I'm not sure if I'll be, anyways, my first time hosting. So, but regardless, check out gmist.ca. We'll have this posted as well as other programming. So thank you everybody for your time today. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Loren.
Thanks everyone.
Bye now.